The taxi driver and the Jinn girl. The night wind slipped through every crack of the windows in Karachi, where car horns and hurried footsteps merged into a never-ending melody. In that land, where street lights cast soft glows and long shadows, there lived a young man named Alai, a soul dwelling within his own world, caught between modest dreams and heavy responsibilities. Alai, 25 years old, was a freelance taxi driver. Each morning, he started his old car, its engine groaning softly, before immersing himself in the suffocating sea of traffic. But no one knew that within him, storms quietly brewed. His father had passed away early, his mother was elderly and ill, and his entire life revolved around two things: the steering wheel and a shabby little home tucked behind the old market. He never complained. Not once. But sometimes, when waiting for passengers on the roadside, Alai would stare at the sunset's reflection on his windshield and ask himself, is there anything else waiting for me in life, besides these rides and debts? That evening, fate quietly knocked on his door. Alai had worked all day without eating. His stomach ached with hunger. Around 10 p.m., he turned into an unfamiliar part of town, a maze of narrow alleys and faded gray houses under antique yellow lights. Turning a random corner, he found himself before what looked like a dreamscape, a tiny food stall with soft lighting and the warm scent of biryani permeating the air. Oddly, it stood isolated in the quiet night, no signboard, no name, just a wooden table and a glowing fire in the corner. Alai stepped out. The cold air made him shiver, but the smell of food pulled him in. From behind the kitchen emerged a young woman, slender, dressed fully in black with a veil over her face. Only her eyes were visible, deep, luminous, and otherworldly. As if they held a realm no one else could enter. "What would you like?" she asked, her voice soft but echoing like a bell in Alai's head. "One biryani, please," he replied, settling silently onto a plastic chair. His heart was pounding, for reasons he couldn't explain. When the food arrived, Alai was spellbound. The rich, spicy aroma, the buttery flavor each spoonful melted into his being. It was more than a meal, it was comfort, like a lullaby in the middle of a desert. After eating, he opened his wallet, but the girl shook her head. "First-time guests don't pay." "But, it's so good." "You should take it," Alai insisted. "Then come back next time." "I'll charge you then," she replied with a gentle smile, her eyes curving like a crescent moon. Alai sat still. Not because of the free meal, but because of the girl standing alone in the dead of night, cooking with serene calm. No signs of fatigue, no need for protection, no fear. She seemed like she didn't belong to this world. That night, Alai couldn't sleep. He didn't know her name, didn't know if the stall truly existed or was a mirage conjured by his hunger and fatigue. But he knew one thing for certain: he had to go back. Because in her eyes, he had seen a door. A door not opened by keys but by emotion. Alai wasn't someone easily drawn to the mysterious. He lived in a world of logic where things had order, explanation, and reason. But that night, after leaving the strange food stall with the veiled girl, he carried something he never thought he would: a feeling of waiting for the inexplicable. The next morning, even after waking, the image of her eyes lingered clearly in his mind. They weren't just beautiful, they were real, profound, as if they didn't just look through him, but touched the deepest parts of his soul. A silent longing rose within him. He had to see her again. Not waiting until evening, Alai cut his workday short. He retraced his steps through the same narrow street from the night before, silently hoping it wasn't just a dream. And then, relief washed over him as he spotted the familiar warm lights of the food stall glowing behind the haze of kitchen smoke. The girl was still there, as though she had never left. "You again?" Her voice floated gently, tinged with hidden meaning. Alai smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I didn't get to thank you properly last night. And I think I could go for another plate of biryani." They sat and talked. The small talk soon turned intimate. Alai learned her name was Huriya. Orphaned young, she and her only sister opened a stall to make a living. She had learned to cook from her mother, a gifted but reclusive woman. "Why set up a stall in such a secluded place?" Alai asked. "Because I don't want to be noticed," she answered, falling silent. Her eyes briefly clouded with sadness, but Alai didn't press. From that day forward, Alai returned frequently. At first for the food, later for her. This mysterious girl with the veil, who never laughed loudly, who cooked like she was meditating. The more they talked, the more Alai felt a veil between Huriya and the world, and he longed to see what was behind it. One rainy night, Alai entered the stall soaking wet. Huriya wordlessly handed him a dry towel and a hot cup of tea. Such a simple gesture, yet it stirred something deep within Alai. No one had ever cared for him like that, so gently, without asking. "Aren't you afraid people will take advantage of your kindness?" he asked. "If they're good, I don't need to fear. If they're not, fearing won't help anyway," she replied. A simple philosophy, but it echoed in Alai's mind long after. One day, while Alai waited for his meal, a strange boy handed Huriya a folded note. Her face grew serious as she read it. Alai noticed, but she smiled and said, "It's nothing. Want to try a new dish today?" That night, on his way home, Alai felt someone following him. A shadow appeared and disappeared in his rear-view mirror. He stopped in a deserted lane but saw no one. Yet an unease crept in. Could Huriya's sudden appearance in his life be more than coincidence? Days later, he returned to the stall, but it was gone. No lights, no smoke, not a sign of life. Just an empty patch of land. He asked nearby locals. All of them shook their heads. That place has been abandoned for years. No stall there. His mind reeled. If it was all an illusion, why did it feel so real? The food, the voice, the eyes. He went home heavy-hearted, but didn't give up. Every day, he drove past that road, hoping. Exactly a week later, on the seventh night, the familiar lights reappeared. The stall stood whole. And Huriya, she was there, as though she had never been gone. Alai entered, trembling. "Why did you disappear like that?" "Because I had to step away," Huriya said, her eyes more serious than ever. "I didn't want to pull you into things that don't belong to your world. But I'm already here. If something's happening, let me be part of it." Huriya looked at him long and deep, then sighed. "You don't know what you're saying, Alai. Your life belongs here, among humans who live, love, and suffer as humans do. But I'm not entirely like you." That statement struck Alai like a misfired arrow. He didn't understand, but the unease from the shadowy night now roared to life. He knew then, behind Huriya was a secret. And that secret, sooner or later, would consume them both. Alai began to spiral into a vortex of nameless thoughts. After that cryptic conversation with Huriya, his mind couldn't shake off the strange and dangerous feeling. He didn't know exactly what was happening, only that something beyond his understanding was surrounding his already fragile life. and it happened faster than he expected. One scorching afternoon, Ali pulled his taxi to the curb to grab a quick bite. He was in a rush, gone just a few minutes. But when he returned, the taxi was gone. Completely gone. No sound. No clue. His heart stopped. Ali ran along the street, screaming in desperation. But around him were only indifferent stares. He asked a few passers-by, but no one had seen anything. His taxi, the only means for his livelihood, rent, and medicine for his mother, had been stolen. That night, Ali returned home in a stunned silence. He lied to his mother, saying the car was in for repairs. But inside, he knew, the real storm had hit. The days that followed were a relentless cycle. He woke up, walked to the police station, waited, and came home empty-handed. The only news he received was, "We'll be in touch if anything comes up." But he knew in a city like this, hope was scarce. His bank account was empty. Rent was due. His mother's cough worsened. And inside Ali, something broke. Not just trust, but his very identity. The independent, self-reliant man who needed no pity now felt small and more lost than ever. In a moment of weakness, he thought of Huriya. He needed someone. Not for help, just to listen. Just to feel like he still existed, still mattered. And so he returned to the food stall. It was still the same. The biryani scent in the air. The soft lighting. And those unchanged eyes. When he told her about the stolen car, Huriya didn't ask many questions. She just listened quietly, her eyes reflecting an unspoken sorrow. After a moment of silence, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. "You'll need this," she said. Ali looked confused. "What is this?" "A car. Not too old. It'll help you start again. You can borrow it. Or, consider it a gift." Ali froze. In an instant, all his defenses crumbled. Pride screamed in protest. He placed the key back on the table. "No, Huriya. I can't accept this. You've helped me enough already. I don't want to be a burden." Huriya wasn't angry. She simply bowed her head and whispered, "You're not a burden. You're a light in my life. You have no idea what that means to me." Ali was speechless. He left the stall that day with trembling legs, but inside, a fierce battle had begun. He wanted to stay strong, but he couldn't deny he needed help. 3 days later, he returned. The stall was closed. Another week passed. Still no sign of her. Then one morning, as he opened his front door, Ali saw an envelope taped to the handle. Inside was a neatly folded note with just 2 lines. "The car is waiting at the corner where we last said goodbye. Stop refusing. Sometimes, accepting is the only way to keep kindness alive." No name. No signature. But he knew. He didn't need confirmation. Ali went to the familiar corner. The car was there, pure white, still new, as if it had just left the showroom. A single jasmine flower sat on the windshield. He gripped the steering wheel. He didn't know whether to cry or smile. But in his heart, he whispered, "If fate brought her into my life, I won't let fate down." Mystery doesn't always come with danger. Sometimes, it's just a truth waiting for permission to be revealed. But sometimes, as Ali began to realize, mystery was a door to a realm beyond logic only the heart was brave enough to enter. Ever since receiving the car and the mysterious note, Ali had worked harder than ever. Every turn of the wheel seemed to ease his burdens bit by bit. But he couldn't forget Huria. Every day, he drove past the street where the stall once stood. Though there was nothing left but an empty lot and a few broken walls, he hoped to see those eyes again one day. And it happened on a dim moonlit night. Stopping his car on the roadside to rest, Ali felt someone watching him. He turned and there stood Huria. No veil, no shadows. She blended with the silver moonlight, her eyes reflecting a light not of this world. "I'm here," she whispered, like a voice from a faraway dream. Ali stood frozen. Every question he had prepared vanished. He had only one thing to say. "Why did you disappear?" "Because I couldn't stay longer." Huria stepped closer, her steps light as the breeze. "I'm not human. Not completely. I'm part of the other world, a fragmented soul, a jinn." Ali's heart raced. But he didn't back away. He wasn't afraid. In fact, it confirmed what he had suspected. And it hurt because he understood that the distance between them wasn't one a promise or sacrifice could bridge. "I had my doubts," Ali sighed. "But I never wanted to believe them. Because if you don't belong to this world, then the love I have for you doesn't mean anything." Huria smiled the saddest smile he had ever seen. "Your love is real. And I tried to keep my distance, knowing that jinns aren't allowed to love, to form attachments. But I failed. You made me forget every rule." In the quiet night, her confession sliced through the silence. Ali stepped closer, reaching out to touch her face. But before his fingers met her cool skin, a faint glow flared up and pushed him back. "You can't," she said, her voice breaking. "We mustn't touch. If we break the law, you'll be pulled into my world, a place where humans cannot survive." Ali clenched his fists. He didn't want to accept it. But her eyes, filled with pleading, begged him to stop. "Huria, then why did you come back?" "Because I felt your call. It wasn't through words but your heart. It crossed the boundary between our worlds. I was granted permission to return only once. Just to speak the truth." Ali's voice trembled. He felt like a child standing before the gates of heaven, yet not allowed to step through. "If you can't stay, then at least let me know that you're happy. Even if it's just for this moment." Huria nodded, tears falling silently. "You gave me something I never believed I could feel, love that asks for nothing in return. If I can take anything with me to the other world, it's that emotion." A gentle breeze swept through. The moonlight grew brighter. And Huria's body began to dissolve into that light, not painfully, not hastily, but like a dream being returned to the sky. "Huria!" Ali cried out, his voice cracking. "If there's ever another chance, come back. Even if you just stand still and watch me from afar. I'll know." The whispering wind was her only reply. Then she was gone. All that remained was a single jasmine flower resting on the passenger seat, light as her presence, but enough for Ali to hold onto forever. If you're still watching this video, and you want to leave a message of gratitude to Huria, please comment the number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you do and turn on the bell, so you never miss a story again. Your support helps us continue to create meaningful content to inform and inspire you. No farewell is ever easy, especially when your heart has touched a soul it recognizes as fate. Ali didn't know how he lived through the days that followed. Everything seemed covered by a gray fog. He still drove his taxi, still smiled at passengers, still passed through familiar streets. But deep inside, there was a void so vast, all the noise of life got swallowed into silence. Every morning, Alai woke up waiting for something. A knock on the door. A letter. A vivid dream. But nothing came. Only the faint scent of jasmine from memory, a fragrance not found in any perfume on earth. He returned to the place where the food stall once stood. Now, it was just an empty plot, grass growing knee-high. Alai sat among the damp weeds and pulled from his pocket a slip of paper, a note he had once written for Huriya, when there was no other way to reach her. If you can still hear me, please let me know you still exist. Even the smallest sign will do. He folded the note and placed it on the old stone base, then walked away quietly. He didn't expect much. He just needed somewhere to leave his longing. But that night, when he returned home and opened the car door, something fell to his feet, a pristine white jasmine flower, still wet with dew. Alai's heart skipped a beat, awakened after a long sleep. He didn't know if it was magic. But he knew, it was enough to help him go on. Maybe she wasn't beside him anymore, but he wasn't alone. A part of her remained in the silence, in every kind gesture he gave or received. From that day, Alai began to write. He documented everything from their first meeting, to every meal, every word, every disappearance and return. He didn't write like someone lost in grief, but like someone trying to preserve memory with the most enduring ink, honest storytelling. One evening, while waiting for a passenger, Alai read aloud the first entry of his journal inside the cab. I don't know where she came from, but I know exactly how it felt when she left, like losing the only light in a long night. I won't try to bring her back. I'll just live a life that makes her proud, if she's still watching quietly. Just then, a middle-aged passenger stepped into the car. He remained silent throughout the ride. But at the destination, he turned to Alai and said, "You're right, son. Some people can't stay with us, but they live on in our hearts. Don't stop telling their stories. They deserve it." That was the first time Alai cried since she left. Not out of sorrow, but because he realized he had rediscovered something vital, the ability to feel and to give love, without fear of losing it again. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alai pulled over near a familiar park. The last rays of sunlight spilled across his windshield, bathing the world in gold. Suddenly, a gentle breeze swept through his window, and with it came the familiar scent of jasmine, stronger than ever. His heart pounded. He opened the door and stepped out, drawn by an invisible force. No need to ask, no need to call. Alai knew, she was near. And there, beneath the old almond tree by the roadside, he saw Huriya. She didn't appear like a ghost, but as if she had never left. Still slender, still wrapped in her black shawl, but now her face glowed in the dusk light. "I couldn't stay away," Huriya said softly, her eyes sparkling. "Your heart, it called me too strongly." Alai stepped closer but stopped a few steps away. "You said last time you could return only once. How is this possible?" "I don't know either. But maybe, a pure-hearted wish has more power than the rules. I'm not here because of a miracle. I'm here because of you." The air thickened with emotion. Alai wanted to run to her, to scream everything he'd buried for so long, but he just stood there, silent. He was afraid that one step closer would make her disappear again. "This time, I've come to say goodbye," Huriya said gently. "The final time. There won't be another. And before I leave, I want to give you a gift. A chance to keep living and to pass on what you once gave me, faith." Alai shook his head, his voice hoarse. "You are the gift. Nothing can replace you. But I can't stay. And if you keep holding me in your heart like a wound, you'll never move on." She stepped closer, truly close for the first time. I need you to do this not just for me, but for yourself. Alai sighed. Then tell me, how do I forget you? Huriya placed a hand over her heart. You don't have to forget. Just remember, let the memory be the light guiding your path, not the chains that bind your steps. Use it to do good. To pass on the magic. In the stillness, Huriya pulled out a small glass vial. Inside was a glimmering light, unidentifiable, yet deeply warm. This holds a part of my energy. No miracles, no powers. Just feeling. A purity I gathered from the love you gave me. When despair finds you, hold this. It will remind you that you were once loved and loved someone enough to change fate. Alai accepted the vial like he was holding her soul again. His hands trembled. I can't say goodbye, he sobbed. Then don't, Huriya smiled through her tears. Just live. Just love. The way you once loved me. At that moment, the sky burst into brilliance for a heartbeat, like a shooting star flashing past. And within that light, Huriya slowly dissolved, not like a ghost, but like a soul set free, leaving behind the intoxicating scent of jasmine and a warmth that lingered. Alai stood still in the quiet park. In his hand, the vial still glowed faintly. Within his heart, something immense had ended, but something even greater had begun. If you're still watching this video and if you too dream of meeting Huriya, even just in a dream, please comment the number 9 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss any future stories. Your support helps us continue creating heartfelt content to inform and inspire you. Time passed. The bitter cold of winter gave way to the golden touch of early spring. The city remained noisy, bustling with the endless chase of survival. But in a quiet corner of that city, a man still drove his pearl-white taxi, its shimmering reflection a silent promise. Alai was no longer the anxious young man he once was. Though the fatigue lines still lingered on his face, his eyes now held something new: peace. A peace that came from within, from the deepest place inside someone who had learned to accept and give freely. He didn't tell anyone his full story, at least, not all of it. To every passenger who entered his car, he simply smiled, listened, and sometimes shared something simple. Sometimes, a stranger can change your whole life. Alai began doing more acts of kindness. He helped the homeless, funded scholarships for underprivileged children, and quietly supported struggling new drivers. Not because he wanted gratitude, but because he knew he was simply continuing a miracle that had once been given to him. One afternoon, while resting at the park, Alai saw a boy sitting alone, a sad look on his face. After asking, Alai learned the boy and his mother had just been evicted from their room. Without hesitation, he took them somewhere safe, made calls to help them find work and temporary shelter. When the mother cried out of gratitude, Alai simply said, "Someone once helped me, someone I could never repay. So now I help you to keep that miracle alive." That night, driving home, Alai caught the faint scent of jasmine again. Not strong, not clear, but just enough to make his heart ache. He looked at the rearview mirror, no one was there. But he knew, somewhere between this world and the next, a heart was still watching over him. And so, Alai's life continued, not with grand miracles, not with supernatural lights. Just a regular man, carrying something extraordinary in his heart: unconditional love, boundless compassion, and a fierce belief that, when we give with all our heart, the universe always finds a way to answer. Reflections through the lens of the Kshetragarbha Bodhisattva Sutra. The story of Alai and Huriya is more than a mystical love crossing the boundaries of worlds. It's a profound illustration of karmic law, compassion, transformation, and liberation from suffering, as taught in the Kittagarbha Bodhisattva Sutra. Insight from the Sutra. 1. Huriya, a being not yet liberated. In the Kittagarbha Sutra, countless beings dwell in the unseen realms, bound by karma, craving, and unfinished attachments including love. Huriya is the embodiment of such a soul bound to another realm, forbidden from loving, from connection. Yet she broke that rule because of Alai's sincere compassion. 2. Alai, the symbol of human potential, he represents all of us, struggling with survival, burdened by debts and sickness, yet still capable of love, trust, and selfless action. When Alai opened his heart to a broken soul, he walked the path of Bodhisattva, unconditional compassion without attachment. 3. The real miracle, not supernatural, but inner transformation. Huriya couldn't stay. But she left Alai a gift, the continuation of love and kindness. Just as the sutra teaches, good deeds and heartfelt vows can dissolve karmic bonds not only for ourselves, but also for the souls still wandering in other realms. White heavy checkmark. Love is not about possession, it's about compassionate release. Alai couldn't keep Huriya, but he held on to the idea of her through kind action. This is dedicating merit, the core spirit of the Kittagarbha teachings. White heavy checkmark. No loss is ever meaningless, even when we lose someone dear. If we remember them through goodness, we help their soul become lighter. That's how we help them cross over with love, not sorrow. White heavy checkmark. Life is our chance to create merit. Alai refused to be a victim. Instead, he became a guide for others. You too can be a bearer of light just like Alai. Dear friend, have you ever faced a loss too heavy to bear? Have you ever missed someone so deeply that it felt like they were silently watching over you? Backhand index pointing right. Remember this, your heart can be the place where miracles continue. You can turn pain into transformation. You can keep someone's light alive by living kindly, loving deeply, and withholding judgment. Direct hit starting today. Help someone, anyone. Even a warm word is enough. Forgive. Love without expectations. And maybe, a soul will smile back at you. Folded hands. Thank you for being with us today. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you've learned today, and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts matter to us, so don't hesitate. Reading your comments gives us incredible strength and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue crafting heartfelt content to inform and inspire. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to see you in the next video. Namo Kittagarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Dove. 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 Namo Kittagarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Dove.